Hello, everybody, and welcome to Policy Matters. I am your co host, State Representative Eric Allen.
And I'm Nicole Horn. Welcome.
Welcome. And we are now going to, well, first of all, before we get started, I want to say Happy Veterans Day. I know one of our guests we have is a veteran, so I want to honor that and say Happy Veterans Day. And also, thank you for joining into our first episode. I think we're going to find this to be extremely fun. We've got some good guests lined up to talk about all things Tuesday night and how the elections went in Georgia and what we think is going to happen going forward. So with that, we've got four guests. Nicole, I'll let you introduce the first two.
Well, we've got a great panel coming up. We invited June Krise, who is our district chair for the Democratic State Party of Georgia, and also was just a state house candidate. So June, welcome. And we also want to bring in Jay Jones, who, as opposed to June coming from North Georgia, Jay is coming from coastal Georgia, from Congressional District 1, also a recent candidate for the Senate, for the state Senate District 1. So both of them are going to be able to speak to kind of what was happening with different parts of the state, what they saw both as candidates and as leaders of the Democratic Party as these races and their races were happening. So can't wait to get into that. And Eric, you're going to introduce our other two panelists.
Yeah, so I'm excited about this, and it may shock a couple of people, but two of my good friends from the House who were also on the ballot for the same race I was for lieutenant governor.
Friends and rivals.
Well, I wouldn't even say rivals because, one of them beat the brakes off of me. And that's State Representative Renitta Shannon, who has served in the House for 6 years, right, Renitta?
That's
You've been
right.
in 6, and is one of our most fierce defenders of democracy and of
Yes.
women's rights and of
Yes.
voters' rights in the Capitol. Just has been a great legislator. Is going to be extremely missed. And also, my dear friend Derrick Jackson, who is also a retiring member of the State House and is a veteran. So once again, Happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service. But also ran for lieutenant governor and is the co-chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, or vice chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, and is also just a fierce defender of all things that are right, and is going to also be a person that's missed down at the Gold Dome. So thank you guys for being on tonight. I know we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about because Tuesday night was quite shocking. So I want to start off by just asking, and I'll start with our congressional chairs because I know they're part of the Democratic Party of Georgia. They're on the ground. Just what is your first take? And I'll start with you, Jay. What's your first take of what happened on Tuesday night?
Or what surprised you the most? Either one.
Yeah,
of those.
what shocked you?
I think the first surprise that shocked me more than anything else is I knew the race was going to be different, but I did not expect such a low voter turnout as far as the race was concerned. With the amount of effort it was advertised and everything pushed out there, and to see a 57% voter turnout, I mean, it was shocking to say the least. So, I mean, that was the first thing that shocked me, if anything.
And what about you, June?
I was sort of feeling like the race was not going to go as well as it did 4 years ago. We'd already been hearing that, that maybe we weren't going to have as good a numbers. But then like 2 weeks out, I started feeling a little better. And, I was kind of hoping it would come out like it did with Biden, that everybody would key on, the abortion issue, women especially. I just felt like surely there are voters out there that are going to come out and vote that didn't before because of some of these key issues, especially women's issues. I know they talked, economy, But, everywhere I went, people were doing great. I see people buying gas, and I've been places and people are spending money. And but there's going to be a big gap, I guess, between the rich and the poor as time goes on, but that's another podcast. I was extremely disappointed because I thought it would be closer than it was.
Well, and June, when we talked, you were kind of blown away by the Republican turnout in North Georgia. Like, you have a candidate like Marcus Flowers,
I was.
a great candidate running against Marjorie Taylor Greene, well funded, and it was surprising how
Yeah. Well, he's over in the 14th. We're in the 9th, and we had a good candidate, Mike Ford. He was a
Mike
vet.
Very moderate.
And he was a member of the NRA. He was a moderate candidate, except he did support a woman's right to choose. I'll tell you, the Republicans are slow, but they're not totally ignorant. They figured out what happened 2 years ago, and they were not going to be outgunned up here. They didn't come out like they should have in the runoff last time, and they saw that we did, and so they weren't going to let that happen.
They definitely had a better ground game than they did 2 years ago.
And they targeted the rural areas. They targeted the rural areas because they knew that's where they could win bigger.
Yeah.
And they did. I talked to a colleague over in Clark County, Canola Scott. He had a good chance to win a Senate seat over there. He won big in Clark, but in Madison and Barra and Jackson, it was 20% or a little bit lower, which is kind of like it ran over here.
Yeah.
19, 18 in some cases. And I think our highest percentage was 36 in a Gainesville race. Yeah, the Republicans got out there in the rural. Yeah, they targeted the rural. They knew that's where their margins were going to be.
So, Renitta, what was your takeaway? What shocked you?
Nothing shocked me. I can't even say that I was surprised about the results. Eric, as you mentioned before, you and I and Derrick have stayed in contact. We really are friends, not rivals at all. We really are friends. And I had been telling you all 2 weeks prior to the election that my prediction was that Senator Warnock would do well. I did think that he would be able to avoid a runoff 2 days after the election. So I thought provisionals were going to come in and that was going to allow him to avoid a runoff. So that was the only area where, I would say if there was any area that I was surprised, I did think that he would be able to avoid a runoff, but I did not think that the rest of the ticket, I just knew that the results were not going to be great because there were too many things going on our side that were just things that I felt like the Republicans would eventually hear about and be able to capitalize on. Yeah. And the other thing was, I have been one of the loudest, I would say probably arguably the loudest voice about abortion rights in the state. But in the South, even I know this, you do not, it's crystal clear that you will not lose an election by being for the right for folks to have an abortion, but you also can't win an election on that because that is not everybody's top issue. And, it was the two things that I think that Democrats continue to forget about, which we saw in these statewide races, was everybody was leaning on the abortion issue. And that is not the number one issue for most folks. Case in point, when our abortion bill passed in 2019, we had one Democrat who was the additional vote. And that person, when they came up for re-election 2 years later, a similar candidate of similar age, similar race, and in fact, same occupation, they both were preachers, primaried that individual, and he still kept his seat. So it does not, abortion doesn't cause you can't win an election off of just abortion, but you're not going to lose one by being supportive of abortion. And so for me, I'm somebody who looks at history, I look at statistics, and since the Voting Rights Act, since JFK, Democrats have not won the majority of white voters. White voters, the majority of them, continue to vote Republican. And you had white women telling us in Georgia throughout the campaign, yes, I'm very concerned about abortion issues, but at the end of the day, I also like that Brian Kemp just made it legal for people to carry guns whenever they want to. So they still feel like, yeah, that's in the AJC, June. Yeah, I saw your mouth drop.
Yeah.
But yeah, like white women were telling us
Good
over and
crossover.
over again, I'm with you on the abortion issue, but you see all these other issues that Brian Kemp, I agree with him on everything else. And when you just stack up the scales, I mean, even look nationally. Before Trump got elected, he said there had to be punishment for women who got an abortion. And he still got elected with the majority of white women's votes. So it's not just white women, but the majority of white people are going to vote Republican. And so I did not feel that, I felt like it was hard for us to really get, I felt like everybody was leaning on the abortion stuff too hard and not enough on everyday workers and, you know, just what matters to the everyday average person. Not saying that abortion doesn't matter, but I'm just saying you can't win a whole election on just abortion. And we had folks of every single statewide office just using that as the main thing. And I think
even in races where, you know, they wouldn't have any control over changing any kind of abortion laws, anything else. So but we're going to come back to that because you said something that triggered me. But Derrick, what were your surprises real quick?
Well, first off, thank you for having us on Policy Matters. To be honest, Eric, and you and I and Renitta are very good friends, contrary to popular belief. But I wasn't surprised. I was not surprised at all of the results from Tuesday, because as elected officials, and we know this, we keep our ears to the ground. And we did not hear the same level of enthusiasm and energy as it was 4 years ago. In fact, a lot of my constituents in my district, and I'm sure in yours as well, Renitta and Eric, they were really confused about the message. To Renitta's point, it wasn't all things, you know, Roe v. Wade and abortion and pro-choice. A lot of our constituents were talking about the economy and the inflation. And I think the other thing that I think as Democrats, what we could do better, we just have a message for everyone, right? We got this big tent and we try to have a message for 15 to 20 different groups. We got to do something very similar what the Republicans have been doing for the last 40 years.
What
the
are the
Republicans'
three?
message is very easy: guns, gods, and babies. That's it. Gun, gods, and babies. For the last 40 years, they may adjust it here and there to sprinkle something in there, just to, you know, cause for Democrats to chase a shiny object over there. They'll talk about defund the police or something like that. But they're all about power and how they can get their base out by talking about God for the evangelicals. They talk about babies for those who don't, you know, got
Pro-life.
their on abortion, and then guns. All things is not Second Amendment, right? And so what we have to do is be a little bit more strategic than that. But I'm not, to answer your question directly, I'm not surprised by the results. The only thing I am surprised about is how well Herschel Walker has done. I'm still baffled by that.
I'm not.
I'm with Jay. I'm not.
Yeah,
Because
I'm not.
Republicans put power over principle all the time. They could care less about the quality
Power
of the
over principles all the time.
Yeah, it's nobody. And
Now,
Derrick,
Derrick, I got a little twitch to it. Y'all must do it up North Atlanta different. We do family, faith, and taxes. And what I mean by taxes is no taxes. But I guess taxes can be equated to what guns would be, because it's a different principle that's not that a standard, because guns wasn't that big thing, I guess, 30, 40 years ago as it is today. And so, but Derrick, I'm telling you right now, me and you talked about this probably a month or two ago. That whole, and I'm not a UGA fan, but that whole UGA relationship piece, everything it's just like the chemistry of everything is playing well. You know, I even want to say UGA is 8-0, and all chemistry right now is all that plays right into that relationship and right into what Herschel Walker was able to, you know, walk into a runoff. And I mean, like I said,
makes me sick, Jay. I mean, what kind of thinking is that?
But
June,
if you heard
is that
what
where
he
voters
said,
are on an 8th grade level? I mean,
June, it's not that
but that's where they are, June.
It's not there on 8th grade level. It's power. Power consumes. Power doesn't care. whatever it takes to keep control power. That's what the Republican Party has always been about, and so that's what we're fighting right now.
But I
fighting.
can also tell you as a communications expert, that is how you're supposed to speak to people, is on an 8th grade level, because that is what everybody can understand. And the majority of voters do not have a bachelor's degree. The majority of you've got to speak in very simple terms. And I do think that too often Democrats get wrapped up in making people take out their political calculator to figure out how this policy is going to benefit me.
Right,
and that's what it feels like. If people have to jump through these mental hoops to figure out how something's going to benefit them, they're not going to take time to do that, not because they are lazy or crazy, but just because people have families to raise. They have jobs.
But Renitta, to that point, Renitta, I think some of that is why you saw. I think there are multiple reasons why it was low energy on the camp, not the same enthusiasm, but I think lack of message or convolution of message was part of the problem. But Derrick, you mentioned it too. I mean, he just dropped again, but the there was not nearly as much excitement and enthusiasm in 2022 as it was in 2018. And when I said that to the New York Times, everybody thought I was being crazy. But
we also don't have Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump played into the atmosphere of 2018. Like, we were all, it was our chance to push back. There is no Donald Trump now.
I see Herschel Walker as Donald Trump.
As Donald, yeah, I think he's the same.
Well, he's not in power, and the Republican who is in power, we can point out pretty easily the right-wing, nutty, kind of awful things he's passed. But to Representative Shannon's point, your average voter couldn't. Your average voter is going to say, but I got this $350 card from him in the mail.
My Kemp card.
My Kemp card.
Well,
what were you going to ask?
Well, the piggyback on that, Nicole, not in the rural area. And, and I sit in a unique space because Chatham may be bigger than everything around me. But when I leave Chatham County, I'm in rural no matter what direction I go. And every sign had the Trump endorsement tag on it. So I don't know what you may not see, but in our area, we saw the Trump you see.
But I do think it was Metro Atlanta who gave Biden. It was Metro Atlanta who gave Biden. And in your rural areas, the people who might not have been willing to put their sign out, but who are like, I've got to go vote against this guy.
Yeah, but it's a lot in the rural area. But
to Renita's point earlier, though, but to Renita's point, it's the suburbs. Let's just be honest. The suburbs can flip either way. And they did. And that's partly because of the message so so abortion focused, when there were other things that people were looking at that I'd asked earlier. Go ahead, Jim.
I think abortion. These women that did not put that at the top of their list probably maybe figured, oh, well, we can go somewhere else to get an abortion. It won't be that hard. We can take the morning after pill. We can do this. We can do that. Yeah, until it happens to you. Now, they're downloading. This is going to play out until it happens to your 14 or 15-year-old daughter. Oh, yeah. Well, and then somebody says to me, well, what about when, you're going to have a baby, even in rape or incest is not an exception. Well, what about when a girl says, oh, I was raped and she really wasn't, just so she can have that abortion, if that is the way the bill is written. I mean, it is such a mess. Renitta, it's so complicated and convoluted till it actually happens to the person. They're not going to realize that, hey, I voted the wrong way on that. It's so sad. It's so sad.
Renitta didn't say it. Renitta didn't say it, but I'm gonna say just like this: the Democratic Party forgot that its base of African Americans have carried Georgia for a long time, and we just said we're not going to deal with. We will deal with every other topic, as Derrick said, every other topic under the tent.
Yep.
We'll talk about, but we're not going to talk about Black issues. And I'm going to tell you, that was the headliner of all conversations, no matter what corner of Georgia you lived in. That's the conversation that came back to me. And to piggyback on what she said earlier, the 8th grade education wasn't the only thing, Nicole. Herschel Walker, we clown him and everything like that, but people in rural Georgia understood everything he was saying in his ignorance. And I want that clear. Everybody understood. Now, did I agree with it? No.
Mhm.
They understood his undertone. They understood his play. And
Yeah.
we have to play that accountability.
And I
But-
want to
but-
mention something about that, because I said that on Roland, probably about 2 months ago. I said, there were a bunch of guests coming on who were, making fun of Herschel. I said, I'm not going to make fun of Herschel. You know why? Because Herschel is relatable. And Jay, to your point, I will extend it. You're saying the rural area, even the metro area,
I agree.
everyone has a crazy uncle. You know your uncle's crazy, but you also love your uncle. And
Uncle
that is what Herschel came across as very relatable. So, and you took the words out of my mouth. I was waiting for my next turn to speak, Jay. But yes, what I was going to say was, instead of us having 3 slogans like God, guns, or baby, Democrats need to focus on the issues that are almost solely Black issues. And then you will get all of the other issues that affect everybody. And the reason they need to do that is because that is the most consistent base that Democrats can count on statistically. And I will just say this. I don't want to say everything right now, but as somebody who was running for lieutenant governor, and I'm sure Derrick and Eric will agree with this, there were a lot of times where we did talk about Black issues and we were being told, by party leaders, don't talk about those things.
Don't talk about that.
Don't talk about it. Don't.
What would be those issues?
Policing. I mean, I have actually talked more about policing than I've talked about abortion. Most people know me for my abortion work, but I've actually done more work on policing issues, and that is something that Democrats continue to run away from. So there were a lot of issues: policing, reparations. I've done work like these are the things that
Criminal
Black
justice
voters
reform, criminal
want to
justice
talk
reform.
about, but
Yep.
you keep hearing from national Democrats as well as state Democrats don't talk about those issues, and they will work against you if you do.
And the
Well-
other thing was tied to local issues. We did a good job in 2020 with bringing it together. 21, we brought the local together, and in 22, we don't use neither effort.
So tell
Well,
me more about
and-
that. When
to
you
your-
say that, what do you see as the difference? What's changed? What did bringing it together look like? And so what was missing in your opinion in 22?
Well, what I thought as a congressional district chair, when it was coming down to, I understood the primaries. We let everybody do what they do in the primaries. We smile, cheese, and everything like that. But immediately following the primaries, and I'm not even going to talk about stuff with the shenanigans with the primaries in December, because we want to keep our whole conversation rolling. But look at it after June and the ticket was set, Nicole, 32 times the DP, and I'll talk about it, and I don't care if the DPG can't do nothing to me. 32 times the DPG showed up in Chatham County, and not one time did I get a phone call, or did I get an update, or did I get a James, we need you here, can you help me here? And watch this, June will back me on this. Me, June, and all the other congressional district chairs were complaining at the DPG constantly. Fix it. And Renitta, guess what happened? Not
Nothing.
a damn thing changed.
And this is
Nothing.
another whole podcast. But now I
That's
want
a
to
2-hour special.
Yeah, it is. And I, yes, you're right. I want to get back to what Renitta was saying about the Black issues. Now, I'm up here in ruby red rural, totally white Georgia in White County. Okay. I heard a lot of people say, some candidates, we don't need Stacey up here. We don't need her to come up here. That's not going to help our ticket. Black issue. Racism.
Mhm.
That really, we need to stay away from this issue or that issue. And I said, look, Stacey Abrams is the top of our ticket. If you can't embrace her and what she stands for, maybe you don't need to be running. But anyway, that was up. That was another like elephant in the room to
Well,
throw
the,
out
the,
there
rea-
up here in rural Georgia.
yeah,
Wow.
and the reality is you can have a black agenda and also talk about other things. I think the Democrats right now feel like if somebody comes out with a strong black agenda, that's all they have. You just need to incorporate that into what you're doing. And there were tons of articles about black men aren't coming out for Stacey. Black men aren't supporting the ticket. But
Hey,
nobody was talking to black men.
That was hurting me. I mean, bad.
Yeah.
There were
Yeah.
some black preachers out this way. I was told a couple of black
Derrick,
preachers that
you hear that, Derrick?
we're not supporting.
I'm waiting on Derrick to talk. I'm
Abrams.
gonna
I
be
don't
quiet.
know. They didn't
My
tell
bow
me who
tie
they
on to get
were.
to talk if I need to.
So as a black man, I thought that it was wrong for Stacey to talk about black men not voting for her. When she said, if black men vote for me, I will win, that sent the wrong message.
Mm-hmm.
That was the wrong message. I think, and I appreciate the dialogue, and I apologize for the connectivity issues. Xfinity will get a phone call from me tomorrow. But listen, we as Democrats know that the message for us has to be very clear and concise. If Barack Obama was coming up to your area, June, everybody and their mother will come out to see Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. So I
Yeah,
just think it's
even
very
out of the district.
subjective. Right. I just think it's very subjective when folks will say, we don't want Stacey because, or we don't want to talk about black issue. We got to be very, very clear as Democrats, right? When we were all campaigning for lieutenant governor, and I was on the coastline over there where Jay was, and a reporter asked me, hey, as a retired naval officer, what kind of Democrat are you? And so I was like, what do you mean, what kind of Democrat am I? Well, you got 22 years in the Navy, 10 years in corporate America, 6 years under the Gold Dome.
Well, I know where they
What
were
kind
going.
of Democrat are you?
I know where they were
So
going.
you know me, Eric and Renitta. I'm like, let me answer your question with the question, because that's what we do as a doctoral student. I'm a Democrat. In some topics, I could be very liberal. Some topics I could be very progressive. Some topics I may be moderate. And what end up happening as a black Democrat, the society try to put us in a particular box. But they don't do the same thing if they came and asked Nicole Horn the same question. They would never ask Nicole what kind of Democrat Nicole is. They'll never ask June what kind of Democrat you are. And so we got to be very, very clear when we start talking about black candidates running statewide and white candidates running statewide. And when we have a message, our message as a Democratic Party should be such, not a national message, right? I think when we co-opt a national message, we're well without our realm, because a lot of things that we just can't do as state representatives, right? We can't do at the state level, right? And so some questions should be, for a congressional leader like a Nikema Williams, a Congresswoman Nikema Williams, or Senator Ossoff or Senator Warnock, right? And so we got to be, when somebody asks what kind of Democrat we are and what kind of agenda we have, there is, to your point, June, a sort of undertone that we sort of pick up. And I just think personally, and I'm sure Renitta and Eric and Jay, you all can speak to this as well, we feel some kind of way because a reporter would not ask the same question to our colleagues who are a white Democrat.
And Derrick, just to be clear, it's not just the racial component; it's also a sex component to it too.
Yeah,
I agree.
And Stacey had a double whammy because not only is she black, she's a black woman.
Yeah.
And I would just say, to your point, Representative Jackson, the question I got is, are you really a Democrat? You white white blonde woman,
Yeah, I
we
agree.
don't actually believe you're a Democrat. And they'll be damned if they actually believe this as a progressive a Democrat as I
And you
am.
probably got that from Democrats.
I got that from Democrats. I didn't get that
Right.
from reporters, but I did get that from Democrats.
Right. And you probably, and you know why that probably question came up, Nicole?
Why?
Because during the 8 years, the first African American president, a lot of Black Democrats did not see white Democrats. They did not see come to Barack Obama's aid, right? I mean, they wanted to hang the man on a cross for wearing a beige suit, right?
His wife was showing her arms in a dress.
And I will tell you this. When I came to White County back in 2001, my husband come up here to take the principal of the high school. That's why we moved up here, and we just sort of kept our place up here. We had Democrats elected up here, our probate judge, our sheriff, our clerk of the court. When Barack Obama became our nominee for president of the United States,
They left the
I
party.
was called to the courthouse. I was an officer in the Democratic Party then. Of course, I immediately joined when I moved up here. They called us. I went, several others. And they all three switched to the Republican Party at the same time when Barack Obama became our nominee and said, June, if we don't, the Republicans are going to beat us because of the nominee for president of the Democratic Party.
June, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but those are what I call Dixiecrats, and I'll continue.
That's what they said. And I can bring witnesses that were with me when they said that. So here we are. And
so let's talk about moving forward, guys, and let's talk about kind of lessons learned. So you've shared kind of, you feel like we need to lean into issues that particularly impact Black families. What advice would you, if you could wave your magic wand or have the ear of Reverend Warnock, sorry, what would you be telling him now in this last sprint?
The way.
Go ahead, go ahead, Renitta. Go ahead.
I was going to say that the way to beat Herschel Walker is to talk about Black issues, particularly Black issues that affect Black men, but Black issues in general, because that's one area that Herschel is not going to be able to talk about. Because number one, the Republican values are contradictory to what is good for Black men as a whole. So he's not going to be able to continue to keep his support if he talks too much about Black issues. And the second thing is Herschel, he said at one point, one of his comments, that he doesn't believe racism exists anymore. So obviously, to me, he's not even keeping up with what is going on in the Black community.
Well,
so I think that's where
epitome.
Senator Warnock can beat him. But the other thing too I want to mention real quick is the AJC has been releasing numbers from the Secretary of State's website about what turnout was like. We are not, even though we keep saying things like, 94% of Black women voted Democrat, 84% of Black men voted Democrat, you're still not getting all of the Black votes that we could be getting. We have 10 million people in Georgia. Almost 8 million are registered. So pretty much everybody in the state. In this last election, we saw close to 4 million total turnout between, all the voters, no matter what party they were voting for. Not quite 4 million, but close to 4 million. So that's still another 4 million hanging out there. And a lot of those are Black voters. So we are still leaving Black voters on the table. We need to get deeper into our base. And the way to do that is to talk about Black issues, just like what the Republicans did. When Trump ran, there was a whole base of white people not voting for Republicans because they said, you know what? These Republicans like Mitt Romney, I don't see myself reflected in them. Bush, what is he talking about? He's got spreadsheets and charts and graphs that don't do anything for me, and I don't care, and he's boring and whatever else. They didn't see themselves reflected in what Republicans were talking about. Trump came out and said, I think these people want to hear that Black and brown people are the reason for all of their problems. I think they want to hear that we should get a wall and immigrants are ruining everything. Basically, he spoke to that base, and whether you agree with him or not, he activated white people who were not voting. Democrats need to do the same. And it's not because, of course, all votes count equally. But the reason I'm saying it needs to be centered on Black voters is because statistically, that is who Democrats can count on. Democrats have not won white women since the beginning of since JFK as a majority. And I keep using white women as the example because we just have no shot with white men unless they are completely super far left. And I think to June's point, like she was saying earlier with the abortion thing, it's not until it actually happens to you. A lot of people don't realize that this is something that can significantly affect your life. So I just think that is where things have to be centered, is around Black issues, and then everything else that is not exclusively Black, like LGBTQ issues, reproductive rights, and things that apply to everybody. You'll get all of that because we know that Black candidates run really progressive for the most part. So you're going to get everything you want by focusing on Black issues.
Take all that what Renitta said and build upon the infrastructure that's already there for you with the DPG, with the 14 congressional districts that lead into the 159 counties, and have that communication conversation go through the chain of command, just as easy as I just called it out, because nobody used that chain of command. And I can tell you, June's right here to verify what I'm saying. Nobody, not one candidate used it. She just laid out what we need to say and do. Now use the chain of command to make it happen.
And
It don't take, you only got 30 days. You have the infrastructure already in play. Get back and say, hey, man, we didn't work with you before, but we do want to work with you now because we need to make sure next 6 years, we have to keep this man in office. It's the simplest solution in the world. But if they're not willing to have conversations with leadership that are elected, because all of us are elected, just like everybody else, elected leadership within the Democratic Party of Georgia, and use it to your advantage. I mean, if you want to create your own stream, it's going to take you 4 months to do it. If you take the stream that's already provided for you by the Democratic Party of Georgia, it takes only 2 hours. And so
let me say, Jay, let me add to that. Stacey Abrams may not speak on an 8th grade level. And she doesn't need to apologize for that. That is one brilliant woman. And 2 years ago, she was head of Fair Fight. She had to step away from that job to run for governor again. She, as she says, I can do the math. I would seek Fair Fight out and seek her advice, because she is the one, I think, that put this whole thing in motion when she lost the first time and got the organization going and moving to get all of these people registered to vote and out to big force in that. And I think she sort of left a vacuum there a little, because, and the DPG was kind of taking her lead when she stepped out to run for governor. So I would tell Reverend Warnock, seek her.
And I would say, June, it started even before she ran in 2018 with New Georgia Project. It had been around even years before that. So Stacey has been building the infrastructure for years. And now with SB 202, we don't have 9 weeks before this runoff. We got 3. And so there's got to be some rapid response, because, one thing I'll say about Herschel Walker, and we were talking about it on the earlier group, Herschel Walker is a pro athlete. He knows how to game plan. He knows how to prep. He may not be that smart on the issues, but he knows how to get himself ready for a fight. And we can't underestimate him when he goes in this runoff. Now, the other question I got for the panel, we're going to talk a little national politics for a second. How relevant do you think the Georgia Senate runoff will be if it's not for control of the Senate? If Arizona and Nevada...
I said that to somebody the other day. I had a conversation. So where's Arizona at now?
Arizona is still in the lead. Kelly is winning in Arizona. MCM is behind in Nevada, but I feel comfortable with where she is. She can, when these votes come in, pull it over. So you may be looking at, by Saturday, we've already got 50 seats in the Senate.
So they won't put that pressure on us.
I think it will be relative. We need, if that happens, we still need a Reverend Warnock so we can tell Joe Manchin and that other, Kristen Sinema.
Go to hell.
But Eric
I think that piece right there, we're talking 6 years too. We're not talking about a full 6 years. So it plays into 2 years down, you have a whole group. 4 years down, you have a whole group. and we will want to lock it in for those 6 years, so we don't have to worry about that seat. So I think that plays.
But you know what? So today, Eric and Derrick and I spent a lot of time together. We went to lunch, and we all agreed, well, brunch. We all agreed that if it looks like Arizona is going to come in, and it looks like Nevada is going to come in, Herschel will be toast with Republicans. They will
They'll
not
throw
care
him to the
about
wind.
him. They will just throw him away immediately on the spot. And the reason why I think that is because they really don't want to vote for him, because if they really did, he should have been able to win it without a runoff. He should have done just as well as Kemp did. He should have been right there, you know, going along, winning on that night if he was going to win. So I think they really only are trying to just keep him fresh. I mean, I know that some of them are tired of taking up for him. With all the stuff that he comes out with, you know, just all the time, it's just always something. So they're already tired of taking up for him. And I think that if we are able to clinch Arizona and Nevada, they will say, you know what, we don't even care about Herschel, and Warnock will be able to coast in.
But do you think the fall off is going to be low enough where it won't compete with the fall off that we traditionally have about the runoff?
Yeah, I think that you will. I think you will see
You
people
understand?
say,
Because we
Yeah,
have
I
a
do.
Democrats are going to have a large fall off. We already had a large fall off in the general. Now we're talking about a large fall off from the general into the runoff.
yeah, I do, because I think that you're going to see Republican leaders not want to do things for him. They're going to say, I don't want to mix his political, whatever nonsense he's got going on with me. Next thing you know, my name's in a scandal. They don't want to take
Yeah,
up
I got
for him.
you.
I think if we get those 2 seats, they will say, get rid of this guy, because the only reason they want him is so that they can get power in the Senate.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
if you looked at the race, there's a percentage of how many people show up to the Georgia races or the state
Mhm.
races that don't show up to federal races too. That was huge if you looked at the difference.
Mhm.
But you also got to count that piece there too.
But I think
Yeah.
the other dynamic is this as it relates to Georgia. Georgia is really now a battleground state. And so if the Republicans, those who are considering running in 24, want to make a play. So if this, let's say, for example, you know, riddle me this scenario for a second. If DeSantis comes from Florida over to Georgia, say, hey, Herschel, I'm here to help you out because I know I'm going to need Georgia in 24, right? Then that's going to cause for Trump to come out, because Trump will say, hey, I'm the one that went and got Herschel Walker out of Texas, where he's been living the last 14 years. And so I think from a chess move that this could very well add to this equation as it relates to Georgia and this U.S. Senate seat, where folks are going to be having to, you know, come out on December 6th. Well, we may very well find Republicans. It may not be Mitch McConnell, because Mitch McConnell already called Herschel Walker a low-level candidate, right? so it won't be Mitch McConnell saying, I need to put some money to this. But I can see where Ted Cruz came to
He's
Georgia
already here.
today,
He's
right?
here today. Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe,
So I can
maybe
see,
Reverend Warnock can get Oprah. I mean, she seemed to help veterans. I mean,
Does anybody think Biden will come? Does anybody?
I
If
think
they-
Biden will probably make a show at the end if he needs to vote.
if Warnock asked him, I think he would.
But
It's hard to know. It's hard to know. Do you think Kemp will go deep in
I'll
with
say the
Herschel?
things that
Do
nobody
you
else
think-
want to say.
Do
One
you
thing
think
I'll say,
Kemp
that
will go deep for Herschel?
no.
No?
I can't
Well-
hear. What was it?
Will Kemp go in big for
Will he
Herschel?
go all out for Herschel? Kemp.
I
Governor?
kind of think he will.
He has nothing to lose.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
and
he's
because
not going to
now
run
he's
for
been
re-election.
rejuvenated.
So
I can't see them on the
Yeah.
stage together, but maybe.
Yeah,
It depends. Once again, if Herschel is the key to control, I think
Yeah.
Kemp stands on a stage with him. If the Senate has already decided, Kemp's going to be saying, "Hey, look, I've got better things to do."
right.
Kemp's gonna focus on Georgia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's going to come up with some reason not to do it.
I got to focus on Georgia.
The only reason why, let me qualify the reason why I'm saying no, that Kemp won't come out and go big for Herschel, because there's still a war between Kemp and Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
And so let us not kid ourselves,
that's
right?
Representative Jackson. Good point. Good point.
So if Herschel Walker's got to decide who's going to be on my stage with me, Herschel Walker gonna go with Trump, not with Kemp.
So
Because-
here's why I think that war is a reason why Kemp may actually help him, because right now Kemp is somebody who won his election handedly, very easily on Tuesday. And even though there's a war between them, Kemp has clearly won. All the Republicans are blaming Trump for all of their national losses. Everybody's like, you cost us everything. You are terrible. None of your candidates won. You got us in the ditch. And he went so hard against Kemp and Raffensperger. Both of them sailed to re-election. So I think if I were Kemp, I'd be thinking, now is my perfect time to jump in and say, yeah, I'm the winner and I can help you. And potentially take over Trump's power.
Yeah,
But that allegiance that Herschel Walker has for Trump is strong.
I think Herschel will go with whoever supports him. I honestly do.
Yeah.
I agree.
And right now, if Trump does announce on Tuesday his reelection campaign, I think that throws Republicans into some serious infighting, because right now he is a proven loser. And if they need to win this seat, you're going to see Pence, you're going to see Chris Christie, you're going to see all these, like Derrick said, all these 24 nominees are all going to be coming in, because the last thing you want to do is not be seen with Herschel so you can claim that win if he wins.
It's the last of Mohegans.
But they're going to have it, because if they don't, then what Republicans will tell them in a primary is, where were you when we needed to win the Senate?
Yep.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting because I agree with you. This is a good chance for Kim to get a segue point, because 24 is right around the corner. You don't win or lose, because regardless, you still got to champion your Republican Party in 24. And if Trump is that person, this is a good segue moment for you to be able to do it. And if you're doing it with Herschel, you're actually doing it with Trump without doing it with Trump. And so and you're doing it for Georgia. And so I think you got to look at those pieces too, man. But
I'm gonna tell you now, Jay, the strategy that Democrats had nationally to prop up these MAGA Republicans proved to be a pretty good one, because they beat all of them except for maybe one or two.
Except for Vance.
Yeah, except for
but I wouldn't consider Vance a traditional MAGA Republican.
He didn't mention Trump in his victory speech. Just totally ignored him. But my point on that is, I don't think Donald Trump being the nominee in 24 may be the worst thing. I think Republicans aren't going to do it because they're tired of losing. But he's got such a hold on that party. And June, you probably know from it. You said it, Jay, in the rural areas, that Trump endorsed sticker still meant something.
Yes.
People still like him.
But
Come on,
Liz. Come on, Liz Cheney. Come on, Liz Cheney.
Well, I don't think she has any chance, but she'll run as an independent and take away some votes.
She's gonna fight Trump.
Right.
And her daddy is meaner and richer than Trump.
Well, she's going to get slapped down, though. So
I know, but she's going to fight.
But
I think a lot of people say they'd vote for her.
I think
a lot of women might vote for her.
I think you're raising a good point, June, because if you look at of the 9 statewide races, 7 of them had libertarians, right? And so some of these libertarians pulled significant. I mean, look at the U.S. Senate, right? 2% is a lot of votes. And so when you got 7 of your 9 races and you look at some of the deciding factors, what we were talking about earlier, Eric and Renitta, you got to look at that as part of your equation. So if Liz says, oh, Trump's going to step out there for 24, and you see Liz right now endorsing Democratic candidates, and she's being bold about it. She's like, listen, I never saw myself doing this, right?
And but her candidates won.
Campaigning.
Yeah, and the candidates she endorsed won. Yep. So,
well, they have a chance to look at it that hard.
Yeah. So we're running up on time. This is good. We thought we were going to talk for 30 minutes, and we're at 50 minutes right now. So that's this is good. Any closing comments, or and we'll go through our guests first. But June, any closing comments on what you think we need to be doing going forward for the runoff, and just kind of debriefing on the election. Any closing comments?
As chair of the 9th Congressional District of Georgia, I will work as hard as I can, and our leadership will. And just as Jay said, we'll work with the coordinated campaign, with Fair Fight, with Warnock's campaign. We have already sent word to the Warnock campaign that all the billboards we had rented here, they're coming up for rent. If the Warnock campaign wants to access those, we're just open to help in any way we can. And thank you for including me in this conversation.
Thank you
Happy
for
to
being
do
here. Yeah. So Jay, what you got?
I think with a single ballot item like this, even though it's probably the most important thing for the United States of America, I think what we do is we need to be focused, making sure we're talking to each other, making sure we're working with each other, making sure that we do not let any, you don't put. The Bible says you don't put old wine in the new sack for a reason, and the reason why is because it's sold harder than in previous situations. So it's so important for us to make sure that we're coming with new ideas, new thinking, new logic, but we also take advantage of whatever scenarios we already have present in our community. I can't work, June. I can't work as hard as I worked in previous years because I'm a working man now. The campaign trail is over for me. However, we have a system down here in the first district that is like no other. I only have 15 counties, and all 15 counties work well at like a well-oiled machine. And I'll say it again: the 14 congressional district chairs communicate very well too. So I would hope that they take advantage of that conversation and move our narrative forward, man. And so that's all. I thank y'all for allowing me to run my mouth for an hour with y'all. And anytime y'all want to get me to run my mouth an hour, especially if I got people like who I got on this thing co-host with, I'm all down for it anytime. And I'm looking forward to December. I'm telling you that now.
Good deal. Good deal. Renitta, what you got?
Yeah, I just want to double up on what June and Jay are saying about, how willing they are to help. June, I've been on plenty of emails with you and plenty of Zooms with you. I know you're willing to work. And Jay, I called Jay to help during the primary, and you set me up you gave me everything I needed for Savannah. So to me, the most shocking thing in this podcast was hearing that campaigns are not taking advantage of both of you. And so my advice is they need to call you. They need to get tight with both of you. And I mean, that would just be the smartest thing they can do for their campaign. So it's a big
I don't
miss
know
if
how
they
any
don't.
campaign is going to win without reaching out to June and Jay. So you messing up.
Yeah, it's a mess up.
Representative Jackson, how about you?
So listen, I will triple up everything that has been said from June, Jay, and Renitta. Listen, I just think we as Democrats and all of us on this screen, we've all ran for office. We understand what it takes, but you gotta make sure that your message is more than just negative ads, right? We cannot overemphasize that the electorate are exhausted with negative ads. I just think that if I had to give Warnock campaign some advice, I would say just talk about your record, the things that you have delivered, because one of the things that we all have heard that Georgia delivered in 2020, and if you all may recall, the one and only thing that they ran on was voting. We're going to get voting rights, John Lewis voting rights, and Biden and Kamala Harris won by 11,700 votes, right? And then we had the audacity a few months later to come back out and get Senators Warnock and Ossoff in. Why? Because Biden said if you get these two gentlemen in, we're going to give you voting rights. We're going to get this John Lewis voting rights law, and we're still waiting. And I think the electorate is getting exhausted of delivering, and not seeing the fruits of their labor. And so we got to pony up and make sure that everyone all the constituency, if we said to, white, black, orange, Asian, everybody in between, but the African Americans are not getting anything, they're like, well, wait a minute, everybody else getting something but us. Everybody getting something but us. We just want to be able to vote, right? Don't get me wrong. The infrastructure bill is great. This bill is great. That bill is great. All that, our society, we need it, right? We're still coming out of this pandemic. But you cannot say what you promised me in 2020 yet to be delivered. We want to have the ability to vote in this country the same way Nicole and June and everybody else vote. We want to have that same right. And so we got to start there. And then second and last but not least, we as Democrats, we got to, all the suggestions that we said on this podcast, Nicole, folks need to listen and take heed and execute. We cannot just continue to leave out coastal Georgia. We can't leave out northern Georgia. All things is not the Atlanta metropolitan area. We keep losing a lot of votes. Them votes that Renitta talked about earlier this evening, in rural Georgia. We got a lot of Black people in rural Georgia, and we leaving those votes on the table. We got to go down to Albany. We got to go down to Valdosta. We got to go down to Macon. We got to go to Muskogee. We got to hit these areas the same way we do the metropolitan area. We got to make sure that we're not leaving no votes, so that way we can exceed that 4 million and surprise them all, because there are 2.3 million Black votes alone in Georgia. 2.3 million. And so if we get closer of this delivering that category of people that are voting 94% Black women and 84% Black men, get closer to that 2.3, I guarantee you we will win every statewide office in Georgia.
No, I mean, to both you, Representative Jackson and Representative Shannon, y'all talked about this. I was out canvassing for Stacey, and when I met with people who were like, and it was Black men, and I was like, "Are you going to go vote?" You know, y'all have seen how excited I am. Are you going to go vote? We need your vote. And they're like, "It doesn't impact me." And it broke my heart. It broke my heart that I was like, this matters. This will impact you. But I think, I mean, Representative Shannon, you talked about this, having specific talking points around police reform, around criminal justice reform. And you also talked about those issues will lift everyone. If we have better, more effective policing, that affects not only Black communities and brown communities, but white communities as well. If we are saving money on criminal justice reform, which our state is spending so many dollars to lock people up, and it's not effective, think of the money we could put back into education. So I appreciate y'all daring our listeners to think, let's reach out and let's be brave enough to talk to the voters who our progressive issues will impact
and will resonate with.
And will
the one thing I would say is we have for so long in Georgia tried to run as Democrat light and try to appeal to Republicans. The reality is we just need to turn out our base, and we need to be unapologetically progressive. We need to be unapologetically liberal. We need to talk to the issues that drive people out to vote. Nationally, Gen Z is what stopped the red wave. Let's just be real. And they did that because of the policies. They did it because of student loan debt forgiveness. They did it because of all these other things that the Biden administration has been doing. Now, we could do more, but we got to stop in Georgia acting like we need, and I'm just going to say it, white validation in order to win elections.
Well, because you've got allies. You've got white allies who are ready to get Democrats in office.
Absolutely. And they'll be with us.
And not just Black Democrats, also white Democrats in office.
Renitta said it at lunch. Having a Black agenda will not turn off the white voters who are going to vote Democrat anyway. It's not. It's not going to turn them off. But what it's going to do is energize millions of voters, at least hundreds of thousands of voters that aren't coming out because we're not talking to them. And we've got to not be afraid to talk to them. If it turns a couple of people off, so be it. But I'd rather make sure we're talking to them and giving the Black agenda a voice and an opportunity to be created in Georgia, and not be afraid to talk about it. Not be afraid to talk about the agenda and the success that Joe Biden has had, but talk more about one bipartisan bill with Ted Cruz, who shows up in Georgia 3 days later to campaign for your opponent. So I just think we need to be very out front and vocal and proud of the Democratic values and principles that we can run on and win on. And then we get the young vote, we get the Black vote, we get the moderate vote in the suburbs. We can bring them all in. We keep talking about a big tent, but we got a doghouse message. If we want to bring in that big tent, you got to have a big tent message.
Yeah.
Eric, a Black agenda uplifts all Georgians.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Eric, I'm
Absolutely.
glad you mentioned that bipartisan piece, because as you all about to close and kick us out, I will ask you all this one question. Have you ever heard a Republican say, I'm gonna reach across the aisle?
No.
The only time you hear somebody talking about reach across the aisle are Democrats. Stacey came out and said, I reach across the aisle. I negotiated with Governor Deal, right? Warnock said, I reach across the aisle. I'm working with Ted Cruz, but never, ever, ever. And I'm 56. And I never heard a Republican say, I'm reaching across the aisle.
Man.
You're right. And matter of fact, they would not be rewarded because their base doesn't want them to reach across the aisle. Once again,
and neither does ours.
Exactly. I was going to say, Democrats think they have to do that to get that crossover vote. And I'm going to close with this. We're not going to continue to win elections as a Democrat running against Democratic values and principles.
Right.
There's no reason why statewide our messaging was not as clear as, I'm going to try to remember what you said, Derrick. Guns, babies, and what else was it?
God.
Mm-hmm.
Guns, God, and babies. We need something that is just as radical on our side, and not to be afraid to be called out for it. We need to be talking about criminal justice reform. We need to be talking about Georgia not just being the best place to do business, but the best place for a Black business to thrive. We need to be talking about these things without apologizing for it. And then we'll get the turnout, because like you said, Nicole, those issues are Georgia issues. We all win when we all participate. We all win when we all feel included. We all win when we're part of the agenda. So I want to thank you guys for coming out for the first episode. I guarantee you we're going to have you back because y'all are too fired up. And matter of fact, we'll do the first week of December after the runoff. We'll bring this same group on. And we'll have
that'll allow me to go ahead and get the comment.
we gonna bring y'all back, and that's a promise. And then we'll spend another hour having some real talk about what's going forward with Georgia politics. We got a new speaker coming in. We got a lot going on. So thank you guys for coming out, and we'll see you guys next time on Policy Matters.
Thanks for the invite, brother. Thanks for the invite, Nicole.
Absolutely.